we're bombarded with stuff all the time. What's happening on the news, what we're seeing on social media, and exposed to more and more stuff to be concerned about. And what do most of us do? If we
I can tell you what I do when I go into a concern spiral.
We're Nick and Hannah True, and we're here to help you do more with your money. Welcome to Craft Your Money Story, a Mapped Out Money podcast. I think one of the most common things that I hear you say about working with clients is that pretty much everybody that comes to you is super stressed and super overwhelmed with money because, like I've heard you say a million times, like reassuring people. Most people do not come to somebody for financial coaching when everything's going great. Normally, like some big major thing has happened in life, either like college is coming up for kids or they're in the middle of a divorce.
They just moved. Lost a spouse.
Had to change jobs. Like something has gotten things to the point where they're like, I can't ignore this anymore. I can't stick my head in the sand about this anymore. And I need help. Or
they've tried on their own over and over and over again. And they just keep kind of like, maybe they'll make a little progress and then, fall back down and they go, fine, that's it. I'm just going to see if I can get some help from somebody. And so by the time that they actually get to working with me, they're typically pretty stressed and pretty overwhelmed, like you said.
It's kind of like the perfect storm of things happening. Like, why do we get so overwhelmed? And it's like we're living in this day and age where we're bombarded with stuff all the time, whether it's, what's happening on the news, what we're seeing on social media, all of these things, we're bombarded with more and more stuff and exposed to more and more stuff to be concerned about. And so we were even just talking about like somebody who goes like, okay, I need to do something about my finances. And you go, okay, I'm in debt. I need to do something about that. I haven't invested anything for retirement. I need to do something about that. I haven't done this. I haven't done that. My kids are going to be going to college in 5 years. This, that, blah, blah, blah.
My kid's going to need a car and then they're going to need that.
And you like go down this like concern spiral. And what do most of us do? If we
I can tell you what I do when I go into a concern spiral.
And we all have different things that we cope with. But like, I think two of the most common ones are like food, which costs money. And then just general, shopping, overspending.
Go on Amazon, go
get
on
that, like,
Instagram.
Dopamine hit or whatever from shopping. And so that got me and you talking about like, how do you address this? Like what's an exercise for just addressing like stress and overwhelm in general? And then like the other thing that kind of got us thinking about this was like the election and like feeling stressed about these things that like we can't do anything about. I mean, like you can vote, but after that it's like you kind of gotta sit back and watch what happens. And so that led us to the exercise that we're kind of going to talk through in today's episode.
So this is an exercise called the circle of concern versus the circle of control. It's something that I learned. I don't even know where I learned this from. I've been using this for, 5 or 6 years now. So I couldn't tell you where I first heard this, but I have found it incredibly helpful for me and you when we're concern spiraling, if we want to call it that. And I found it particularly helpful when working with clients when they start to concern spiral as well.
Okay, well, you're the pro, so why don't you like walk us through the exercise?
Sure. So the first thing is we're just going to start with like a blank black screen. And Hannah is going to magically do this in editing to go along with this. So we've got a blank black screen, and this basically represents everything that is concerning in the world.
So some of this stuff, like you haven't even been exposed to.
You have no idea.
You don't even know to be concerned about it. So this is like all of the things.
All of the things that exist. And then what we're going to do is we're going to draw a gray circle. And then inside that circle, we're going to start listing all of the things that you are concerned about. And so we kind of wanted to do an example of just typical things that we hear from clients. And so it could include things like the recent hurricanes. It includes
the election.
It includes everything that you see on the news.
What's going to happen with mortgage rates?
What's going to happen with, are the Fed going to increase rates or decrease rates? Things like that impact you or people that you love. So like a friend who just got diagnosed with cancer. It includes things like some other injustice you saw on social media. And then, of course, it includes a ton of things that are deeply personal to you. So like your budget, your debt, your lack of income, or an expense for your kid, or, your kid's progress at school, or aging parents, having a baby. It includes like your health and weight. It includes Hobbies that you might be concerned about could include friendships that feel like maybe they're not, I don't know, going the way that you want them to. Could include selling houses, buying a house, relationships with family members or friends. Could be a family member struggling with addiction or substance abuse. I mean, it's literally a long list of everything that you can think of that you go, yeah, I kind of worry about these things and they take up space in my brain.
Yeah. And I think just listening to you list off examples, it's like, okay, it's pretty obvious why we start feeling overwhelmed.
Totally.
If we don't come at this with any sort of like intentional strategy to think through these things.
Yep.
So once we've kind of thought about in general, okay, what are the things that are weighing on me? Then what do we do?
So the next step here is to draw a smaller sort of white circle around the stuff that you can control. Now, this is the circle of control. It doesn't mean that you can 100% control these things, but it does mean that you can impact them. So these are the things that you can have some sort of say into or take some sort of action that can impact or direct this thing. The point is that we're going to now circle a much smaller group of items. And already, if you're doing this exercise, you can start to realize I'm concerned about a whole lot of stuff that I actually can't do a lot about. And so there's things like all of the stuff, especially that shows up on mainstream news, that we fill our minds with, that we fill our concern, attention with, that outside of voting, not a lot you can do on a day-to-day, week-to-week basis unless you are directly involved in organizations or something that do something. But most of us, between everything we have going on in our own families and personal lives, not a lot we can do with that. And so spending our time worrying and being concerned about those things ends up taking away from the time and energy that we could use on the stuff that we can actually have an impact on.
Yeah, it ends up just making you like totally ineffective.
Yes.
Especially as Christians, having like discipline over your thought life. Like we've talked about in the past couple of episodes, like acknowledging our limits and acknowledging that we're not in control. God is sovereign. God's in control. We can't fix everything. And so really trying to assess like, all right, Lord, what are the things that you would have me to do? And what are the things that I just need to let go and trust that like you're doing something there, even though I can't fix it, even though I can't force the outcome that I think would be best. Like you're in control, you know best, and I can leave that to you.
Yes, and you're already kind of alluding to this idea that even the things that we can control, we then still have a limited capacity, right? And so we only have a certain amount of time, we only have a certain amount of money, we only have a certain amount of energy, and even within the circle of our control, it can start to get really, really overwhelming if we're not intentional about what is the handful of things that I am most focused on at the moment. That kind of brings us to the end of like the initial, I guess, exercise, if you will. The point here is helping a client understand all the stuff that you're concerned about. It's not that you shouldn't be concerned. I get it. I'm not saying don't worry about those things or don't be concerned. What I'm saying is it is not practical for you to spend a lot of time worrying about these things.
It's not wise to fix your mind on those things.
Yes, it's not wise to fix your mind. I love that. So therefore, if you want to actually make an impact, if you would like to actually change something about your situation, be it financial or otherwise, then we need to spend our energy and our focus on the things that we can have an impact on. And so that's the smaller circle of control. And then from there, we need to figure out, okay, well, which items are we now going to be most focused on?
Okay, so let's choose like one thing that's in the circle of concern and in the circle of control and like walk through it. So, if we were going to say, okay, I've got this debt and I'm concerned about it and it is within my control to do something about it.
Yeah.
Then how do we figure out the something to do?
I think what this like brings up to me a lot of the times is this classic sort of business advice. Also, James Clear talks about this in his book, Atomic Habits, which is like focusing on the inputs rather than the output. And so James Clear would use, if he was using a health and fitness example, he would talk about how if you wake up and you're like, my goal today is to get more fit, or I'm going to focus on losing weight. It's like, I know it's a hard thing to wrap your mind around for people, but you actually can't do the task, lose weight.
Yeah.
That is not a task that you can do.
Yeah.
It's not an action you can take. What you can do is track the food you put in your mouth, What you can do is go burn some calories, right? Exercise. Those are the tasks that you can do.
Yeah. So like what are the actions, the inputs that lead to the output, the losing weight
Yes.
that you want, or
Yeah.
the paying off debt that you want?
And so with debt, there's a number of things that you could do. This is kind of where the second piece of advice that we wanted to make sure we said in this episode is start with what's easy. And so if we think about, we made a brainstorm list of all the stuff that we could do to try and like deal with our debt. We would want to start with the easiest one.
Yeah. So let's say you could increase your income. You could decrease your spending.
Yep. You could create a spreadsheet that simply just organizes all the debts you have by amounts and interest rates.
You could do some sort of consolidation thing. Are there any other actions you want to put on there?
I mean, like there's sub actions, what you said, right? So like if you're going to increase income, you could sell stuff, you know, you could have a garage sale. You could try to ask for a raise. You could take on a side job, right? So there's ways of increasing income. When it comes to decreasing spending, obviously you need to first know what you are spending so that then you can decide where you want to decrease. But I think if we just start with the basic list you just said, the easiest one to me starts with just organizing them. Like so often when people first come to me, going back to the overwhelm thing, they're overwhelmed and they're like, I have this mountain of debt and I'm so nervous. And they're
scared to even
know what the total is.
Yeah.
Right. And it's actually like one of the most important critical steps to actually making progress towards paying the thing down. Whether you use Undebt It, which is very popular, like debt pay down tool, or you just get a pencil and a piece of paper and write out basically the three things I care about are like, what's the monthly minimum payment for the debt? What is the total amount of the debt? And what is the interest rate? And we do that for every single debt that somebody has. And then from there, you can start to talk about whether or not you want to do a debt snowball or how you want to attack this. Does it make sense to consolidate? But like literally the first and easiest step is get organized with it so we even know what you're doing.
Yeah, I think that starting with the simplest thing is like so important. I was reading this book on drawing and he was explaining how he approaches it like putting together a jigsaw puzzle. And like, you know, with the jigsaw puzzle, you start with the easiest thing. And the easiest thing is to get all of your edge pieces out. And then by doing that, it makes all of the future steps for what you have to do easier.
Yeah.
Because you've narrowed down the number of pieces that you're looking at. And also you've got a framework to build off of.
It's something we use all the time, even in our personal life. If you've watched this channel for a while or listened to this podcast for a while, you know that we have spent a great deal of time and effort over the last few years on house projects. Talk about something that can get overwhelming very quickly.
Yeah.
And almost always we attack it with the same thing because we can lay in bed at night, and you especially, and just worry and concern ourselves with all of the projects that need to get done on this place.
Yeah. I turn into like a frantic little like chipmunk or something. I don't know. I just like my mind's just like darting back and forth between like, oh my gosh, we need to do this. We need to do that. We're not doing this the way I want us to do it. We're not doing this fast enough. We're not like.
Well, and to be fair to you, like part of the problem, and I'm definitely at fault of this too, is that we have had a really bad habit of getting projects like 95% done and then starting the next project rather than like
you
tying
run into
a
some
bow.
sort of like delay.
Yes.
And you go, okay, well, while we're waiting on that, we'll go start this over here.
And then you're in the middle of like 80% done
so
projects
bad.
and it's a nightmare.
Bad. Yeah. But I do feel like that's a good metaphor for like a lot of things.
Totally.
Because, yeah, a lot of things in life unfold that way.
And so when it comes to our building projects, what we've had to do, or I think what we've had to learn to do, is like think about all of them and go, okay, which one's like the easiest one that we can start with? Like just to get the ball rolling.
Also, you know, I want to point this out too. It's totally against. I don't know if this is just like business advice or whatever, but the whole eat the frog idea, like productivity, whatever.
Yeah.
And I really don't think I agree with that. Like, at least for me, and I know like everybody works different and everything, but I think normally I think I do better if I gain momentum by starting with the easiest thing. I think
that's probably true for most people.
And if I try to just like eat the frog, what I do is like procrastinate a really, really long time before eating the frog. And then I don't even have time for the easy stuff. You know what I mean?
No, I get that. I think there's also, when it comes to like using our building example, I think actually is pretty good too from the standpoint of So with the jigsaw puzzle, you were talking about how when you get the edge pieces in order, it makes the other parts of the puzzle easier to do. Same thing with the building. When we did some of the easier projects first, because we're not skilled carpenters,
We built up
we
those
built
skills.
up small skills that then made the other more complex projects easier.
Yes. And even if you're not building up a skill, you're building up your confidence and you're
Totally.
you're stacking up little wins to
Yes.
look back on and go, okay, I did this thing. I can do this.
Like I think about, so in our building, we built 2 fireplace walls. And so
Like electric fireplaces.
yeah, electric, not like brick, real fireplaces, but like built-in cabinets, shelving and stuff. And the second one I thought was harder in a handful of ways than the first one. We did the first one and we learned a ton.
So much.
How many times did that one wall, we like
We kept having to take it apart and
screwed it all together and then
like 2 in the
realized we
morning.
messed up and had to undo it. We did that 2 or 3 times. But we learned a lot of skills that then made the next fireplace
Go smoother.
way smoother.
Yeah, totally.
And the same thing is true for your money. And so I think with a lot of clients, I'm looking for those little bitty things that we can do where we go, hey, let's just get the debts organized.
Yeah.
And then, oh, we got them organized. Great. And that's where the debt snowball, which a lot of people know about, is starting with the smallest debt, not the highest interest rate, to try and again build that momentum. And so for most people, that's kind of the method that we go with. And it becomes this, hey, let's focus on this. What's a small thing that we can do to save money so that we could put more towards the debt?
Yeah. It's just, if you're trying to increase your income or decrease your spending, don't start with the hardest way to do those things. Start with the easiest. Don't cut out the thing that you love the most in your budget. Like, cut out some minor little spending that you won't miss that much and gradually work towards the other stuff if you decide to cut that other stuff.
Well, and it's like there are some clients where they end up actually deciding to make pretty big decisions in order to change their financial situation, like moving, selling a house, selling a vehicle, like that kind of stuff. But we don't talk about that on the
you gotta
first
be
call.
bought in before you get there.
No.
Totally.
Like it takes some building up.
Well, it's like with us, in different seasons of like really saving towards a major goal, we've cut our monthly spending money to like as low as $30 each.
Yep.
And if we had started there like out of the gate, it'd be like, oh man, that's a real bummer.
Yeah.
But because we didn't start there, we started on easier things and we worked on getting on the same page and everything together. Then it was both of us going like, yeah, let's cut down to $30 because then we can put that money towards this. And that's way more important right now.
Yep.
In case someone has no idea what I'm talking about with the eating the frog thing, is that a book? I don't even know. I know I've
I
heard
think there
like
is a book. Yeah.
Okay. I didn't know if you could like give a resource if anybody's like, what the
I
heck
think there
she
is a
talking
book.
about?
The basic idea is pick your hardest task for the day and first thing in the morning, do that first.
Yeah.
I actually think about this differently. There's a matrix, and I'm going to butcher this. I think about this a lot because I don't know the name of who invented this matrix, but if you think about a 4x4 or a 2x2 matrix, so 4 options, right?
Is this the important versus like
yes.
urgent thing? Okay.
I actually prefer this to think about rather than like the eat the frog thing, but overlaying again, which one is easy. And so this isn't maybe an important nuance to everything we've been talking about, which is there are things that you could do that fall purely into the not important, not urgent bucket. So again, our matrix, it has an axis that is important and an axis that is urgent.
And urgent would be like there's a strict timeline on
Yes.
this thing.
Yes. And so taxes are urgent, right? Depending on the time of year. So there's not important, not urgent things. There are important, not urgent things. There are not important, but urgent. And then there's important and urgent.
What would be not important but urgent?
Not important but urgent would be like paying your Netflix bill, maybe.
Okay.
Something like that.
That's a good example. Yeah.
Like it's urgent, it's due right now.
Yeah.
But
If I don't pay it, we don't have Netflix. Yeah.
So typically when I'm looking at someone's financial situation, we want to start with the important and urgent things. We want to make sure we're not getting bogged down in the urgent, not important stuff.
Yeah.
And we want to make sure we're definitely not getting bogged down in the stuff that is not important or not urgent.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so what you got to be careful of, I think, with the choose the easiest sort of piece of advice is if you're only ever
You've got
doing
something with like time constraints or something.
well, that, but also just not important stuff. I mean,
Yeah.
when people just choose easy, not important things to waste time on.
Yeah.
Like, because it's like, well, Nick said choose the easy one, and it's like, okay, but it still needs to be
Easy,
helpful.
but still helpful. Yeah.
So
That is a good specification.
rather than eating the frog, I would say it's like high importance, easy,
Yeah.
right? So what's the easiest thing that still is helpful and actually helping you make progress?
Yeah, that's like the whole idea of, productive procrastination and
Totally.
like making sure that you don't get stuck in that. And I can
Yeah.
be like so guilty of that. Like,
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
just going to read one more article on this thing before I go to work on what I actually need to work on.
Oh, so a really good example there when in like personal finance is people who read investing books, but don't ever actually invest their money. And I have been guilty of this because
Well, me and you are both like big learners.
Yes.
And so, yeah.
So it's very easy for me to go like, well, I just need to read one more book on investing and then I'll open up our IRA account and actually invest money. And it's like, in the meantime, dude, like you could just put in $10 or $50 and actually learn something while making progress. So that's definitely an area of like choosing the productive procrastination, easy, but actually not that important.
Yeah. And I think like if there are things, on your list that you need to do that do require some like education, taking a class, reading a book, whatever, just like giving yourself a timeline kind of like, okay, I'm going to read this book, but I'm going to take action on it by this date.
This date. Yeah. Even if it's small, which is helpful.
Yeah. So financially speaking, where do they start?
I mean, the obvious, like easiest to me is I always call it turning on the financial GPS. If you're driving a car and you don't even have the GPS turned on, let's just start there. And that means tracking your money. We use YNAB for that. There's lots of other tools that you could use for that, but you need to figure out how to track what is going on so that you at least know what's happening. Let's operate under the assumption you've done that. The next step to me, again, this one's actually kind of hard. It should be easy, but it's kind of hard because people get a lot of mental hangups around it, but it is actually not financial. It is visioning, which we have talked about at length.
We hammer this all the time.
We will continue to talk about this at length because it is the most important thing. But it is, you've got to get clear on where you want to go.
Yeah.
Period. So to me, tracking your money and then creating a vision for where you want to go. Once you've done those two things, honestly, the next steps start to kind of become clear because you know what you're doing right now. You know where you want to go. And if you can bring a little bit of thought and strategy to it, it becomes pretty obvious of the things that you're currently doing that are not helping you get towards where you want to go. And so then it becomes a very simple, but again, not necessarily easy process of choosing what are the small things that we can start to change
that put me on the trajectory towards what I've said my vision is.
Bingo. That's it. Yeah.
And I think just like side note, we have lots of stuff on vision, but when you're doing the vision, just remember like it's just a draft.
Yes.
Like you can change this, you can revisit it, and you absolutely should. Nick and I change our vision all the time. Like core foundational beliefs and everything stay the same, but the way those things play out changes a lot.
Totally.
So,
yeah. The cool thing about this process is that when you find yourself sort of spiraling down this circle of concern, rabbit hole, if you can have the self-awareness to pause, recognize that it's not practical, it is not helpful, and instead you should focus on the circle of control. If you will actually focus on that and make progress towards those things, slowly over time, your circle of control will expand.
Yeah.
And you can actually find that things that you used to be concerned about that were outside of your circle of control are now actually within your circle of control. And you could actually impact them because you've gotten these other things figured out, whether it's your money is now so tied, so dialed in that you can now give in ways that can impact these things that you were once concerned about but couldn't do anything about, or whether it's that your stuff is now so dialed in that you have the skill set to help someone else that you were concerned about, or whatever. There's lots of ways this plays out. But again, worrying about the stuff that you can't do anything about is like the most impractical way to spend your time, effort, and energy.
Yep.
It is hard to let go, but if you can recognize that that truly is the path, it's actually the most direct path towards one day being able to impact those things.
Yeah.
And when you can really believe that, it frees you up to focus on the stuff within your circle of control that actually matters, that will help you make the progress you need.
And I think for us, like, prayer is such a huge part of this. I mean,
Totally.
like, you and I literally pray that the Lord will show us, like, okay, these are all of the things that are running through our mind that we are concerned about and like feeling overwhelmed about. Will you please show us, like, what would you have us to do
Yes.
about these things, and what things do we just need to pray about? And Faith Womack, she does some different online stuff with like Bible courses. She does this thing where she keeps an envelope in her Bible, and when she has been praying about something or trying to impact something for a long time and it's not going the way she was hoping it would go, she's not seeing the results she was hoping to see, or, you know, whatever, something that's out of her control that she was praying about just isn't changing, she'll literally write it down on a piece of paper and put it in the envelope. And as she's doing that, just pray, like, Lord, you know that this thing, it's not showing the outcome that I was hoping for. And I know that I don't know everything and that you do. And so what I think is best in this situation might not actually be best. And so I'm going to stop praying for this outcome that I have been praying for, because maybe that's not your will. So I'm putting it in the envelope. I'm leaving it to you, but, like, you know that if it's your will for this outcome, you know, to happen, that, like, I would really like that. But, you know, just like having that
But it's
discipline to not
helpful. Yeah.
fixate on things and to recognize, like, we don't know everything. Like, maybe what we think would be best isn't best. And
Yep.
maybe the way we thought we could help the situation, we can't actually help the
Yes.
situation, and just all of that stuff. So I just think that helps us a lot and keeps us from driving ourselves crazy.
Totally. So if you're feeling overwhelmed by all the things that you are concerned about, we hope that you will find this visual of the circle of concern versus the circle of control helpful. And if you're just listening to the audio version of this, this is when you might want to pop over to YouTube and check out the visual, if that would be helpful for
I'm
you.
also going to have to stick some, like, fireplace pictures.
Of course,
in
we're
here,
going to get some
so,
fireplace in
yeah,
here of all
for
our
sure.
buildings. So thanks as always for listening, and we will see you in the next episode.
Bye.